forward. But there are also some, again, some mitigating circumstances that happen every year that we know will be able to come down in terms of health insurance. We have $60,000 in health insurance that I think we'll be able to take off, that I just didn't have that information. So we need more claims history and we need more time as we move forward. So in the next few weeks, we'll be able to determine a better number as we move that forward. We're also going to have a better number in terms of revenue. There's some challenges this year in terms of revenue, but I think we'll be able to work those through. The debt service, this is the first year that we've had a real increase in the last few. Mostly related to the regional interconnection coming online. This is kind of the first payment for that. And we've got a little bit more capital coming forward this time too than we've had in the past. So this narrative really just gives you an outline of what we did on the at the Board of Selectmen level, and kind of updates from that letter. And the sewer assessment fund, if you look under revenues on page 2, that's an item that came to our attention in the last month or so. As you know, we've been refunding bonds, and we've saved a couple of $1 million over the last few years by refinancing some of our bonds. But we began to review the history of the operating transfer in revenue from the sewer assessment fund, which was $1.2 million, I believe, last year, and it's been in that neighborhood. And the town uses that for revenue to support what we're doing. But when Anna started to analyze that, we realized that they are ahead of schedule to pay down their loan, so that payment needs to be significantly reduced. So when we talk about revenues, you're going to see instead of 1.2 million, it's about 650,000. So, that's a hit that we're taking with regard to a revenue projection there. So I'm sure in the next few weeks we'll have a more specific number as that whole process becomes analyzed, but we have to go way back into the 90s and kind of bring that forward. Anna hasn't had a lot of time to get all the way back there, but we will, because we're going to need to understand what's going on with that. So that's one of the revenue things. It talks here about that. And again, we're following the state project, the state budget situation. The governor has come out and made his presentation. He's kind of kept this mostly whole. There's I think an $80,000 reduction in pilot that he's proposed, but the legislature has not done anything. Their hearings have been mostly on other items, and the Appropriations Committee has not yet met for hearings on the budget. That comes probably in this short session toward the end of this month. They're done kind of mid-April, 1st of May or May 7th or 8th. So those things will start happening. And of course, our public hearing, your public hearing that you have for the community is in the third week of April. So we're going to be balancing, as we do every year, what happens with the state with what happens here. But there has been a commitment by all the legislatures up there to keep the towns whole with regard to the current state revenues that they have. And some things with pilot, we are working with the Board of Education to move some of the pilot funding, which was typically a municipal-only fund, but to move it to they've allowed us to share it with the Board of Education, and some of that increase we're doing to upgrade some of the security facilities with the schools to help them pay that, in conjunction with, you heard tonight, the Learn Fund that they're planning on using for that. So that's kind of the overview, and I know we've had a long night and you haven't even opened the book, so I don't know how you want to proceed at this point. I know you seem to be dying to say something.
I have an overall question.
Okay.
So I think you had mentioned that we should be expecting about $2 million in revenues from the Gateway Common Apartments. Is that included in this fiscal year?
No. That is a full build-out with when Costco is built out and all 12 of those buildings are done with Gateway Commons. That will have to be built and then go on a subsequent grand list. So that's a couple of years away before we see those revenues.
But
We'll see them.
but the apartments will be built by the end of this year, or
The apartments, well, they're building
So-
2 buildings now. Where are we now? March. I would expect maybe a year from now, maybe a year and a half from now, all 12 may be built. So then it's the subsequent October grand list. And then,
so it'll be a while before we see a revenue increase.
we will
from-
start to see some revenue increase. The
Right.
entire revenue, now Costco is probably going to come in the next 5 or 6 months. When they build that, that'll probably be online before all the apartments, because that'll go up quicker.
So if we approve this budget as it's presented to us, we're looking at an increase in the mill rate.
This represents, if you look at the Board of Ed presentation to you, and this, if you didn't do anything else, then it is an increase. It's a higher increase than I think we're going to have. I think last year's increase was, what, half a mil, 0.6, 0.6 mils, and I think that's what we should be shooting for at this point. This represents a higher than that, but I think when some of the mitigating factors, as they work their way through, and as we have these discussions on some of the initiatives that I want to put forward, then, we'll be able to figure out how to bring us back down into that level, and I think that's where we kind of have to be.
What? Gosh.
Now, I know that Mr. Harney's question and relates to the chairman's request about a 3-year history. You note that I did return roughly, we as a town and the department heads and Anna, we returned about approximately $700,000 per year unspent from this budget over the last 3 years. So what was asked for us is, where did that money come from? So this sheet that you have this evening is the 3-year history, identifying those line items that had extra money that you got back, so it would help in your deliberations. Now, I don't think that you're going to be able to say, okay, that's great, we can come up with $699,000 by wiping out all those dollars. I think, you're going to have to look at that a little closer, but at least it will give you an opportunity to see where some of those dollars are. And if you look, for example, Public Works and Highway, in 2011, they had $314,000 money that they would return, but the 2012 it was $218,000. We kind of tightened it up a little bit. Last year was $115,000, and I think this year, as a result of what's happened with the storm, I don't think you're going to see that level of maybe in the 20s.
Right, given that there'll be fluctuations in that number.
Yeah. So, but this anyway is what you asked for. I think it'll be
Yeah,
important
no,
for
it'll
you to
help.
have,
It's
and
very
it'll give you an opportunity for discussion and probably a better use of your magnifying glass.
What was
Were
the-
we asleep in 2000? Is that true? The Board of Ed had a
No, that had to do with
1,263?
federal ARRA funds.
Right,
That's
a
okay.
one-time deal.
Yeah, all right.
So that was in a different, that was in a different fund. So it has to be noted here, but it was really, that was the federal funding.
So you're going by projected revenue from last year, state, and how about the town side? Do you have a number in your head? A conservative number of what the revenue would be in total,
Well,
town, state?
We have a pretty good number for revenue. Some of the things that we're seeing, for example, you talk about those large buildings in Costco, that's going to significantly increase the building permits and the zoning permits and the
Some of
sewer
the
assessment
permit
fund.
money has come in too.
That will come in much higher as a result of that, but we'll have a little bit more costs. We're asking in our budget for, a greater use of the part-time official. Instead, he's 14 or so, maybe we're doubling the amount of hours that he wants to be able to get through those large buildings. So we'll talk about that as we move forward. But the revenue will offset.
Do you have an estimate of what that total number would be, just from using last year's? I don't have last year's number, I just.
Which number is that?
Is there a revenue number?
The
Okay, all
revenue
right.
sheet is in your book under
Okay.
revenues. It'll give you an idea with
So
what
what I
we're
did, something
doing. And
to
it's kind of our
play
best
with.
guess. Housing sales are up a little bit, so conveyance taxes are up a
Yeah,
little bit, but
right.
the housing prices are less than they were a number of
They
years
haven't
ago.
moved.
So the
Right.
significant increase in conveyance tax may not
Show.
be that kind of history.
Right.
Park and Rec, the beach is going to be generating more money this year to offset some of the extra cost of staffing the beach. We're looking, for example, to put some dinghy docks down there by Cheney Park so that, now that we have the opening of the bridge from 45 feet to 101, we're expecting now to kind of hope to reverse the flow of our sailboats and other large boats going over to Block Island and Long Island to try to get some of those folks to come over with us. So they need some new moorings out in the river. We're going to put some of those in and put a dinghy dock there, and hopefully that'll generate some revenue, not so much to the town, but it'll generate revenue. The business community will move people in. So we get the boardwalk done, in the late fall. Maybe we'll see something in the shoulder season, but certainly in the spring, that will drive some traffic and drive some business here that will help, help in the long run. Two other things, initiatives that are occurring that I've been working pretty hard on. One is animal control, and the other is the dispatch. I was up in Hartford yesterday lobbying for new language that would allow municipalities to have a entity created so that not one municipality will be the overarching authority in a regional situation. So East Lyme, Waterford, and New London are trying to do a joint dispatch center. We're going to start in the Waterford location, but it will not be run by Waterford. It will be run by the New London County Regional Dispatch, or whatever the name happens to be, this entity. The entity will hire and fire, the entity will control, the entity will manage. There will be representatives from the community to that entity that have equal voice. The charge will be based on call volume, and then it's a separate and apart entity. And we'll see significant savings off the emergency operations and dispatch budget once that gets going as a result of labor savings. But we need the legislature to enable that opportunity for us, which has not been enabled yet, Ms.
So are you
Alberti.
saying that the building on Boston Post Road will be vacant?
I'm saying that the building on Boston Post Road will not, if this passes, will not be a full-time dispatch center. It is, as part of the whole process, you need to have a redundant center. In other words, if something happens and that gets blown up or destroyed by fire, there has to be an opportunity for dispatch to operate. That will be the backup location. We need that for grants. The other thing is that I've told people, listen, I'm not comfortable because of the opportunity for disaster that East Lyme has with nuclear, with rail, with I-95, with boats, with river, with, we need to have an operating dispatch center. So if I got to go in there and flip a switch and convene, a disaster relief team, then we'll have that, and I won't have to fight for seats over in a regional dispatch. We'll be able to coordinate, and in the agreement, we'll assign a dispatcher to the East Lyme Dispatch Center. We'll just flick the switch on, and we'll assign one to New London. So if it's in a regional emergency, we'll be able to coordinate. The main dispatch will work the heavy part of the load, but we'll be able to work our streets and work our buildings and work on and have that kind of coordination. So all of those details are working out, but no, they won't be shuttered. It will be less used.
So that, yesterday you were up there on, it was a raised bill, so the bill's there, and where was the public hearing, with public safety?
Public Safety Committee was doing the raised bill. Interestingly enough, we had to
You were probably battling the consolidation on the state side. Are they getting mixed up there when you guys went up there?
Well, it was good that we had it. The differentiating, and for those of you who don't know, the state police barracks have consolidated their dispatch operation up into Tolland, and they're having some management issues as a result of that, and there's a lot of stresses on the dispatchers. But what's going on is you have Troop B, for example, that and I don't have the exact numbers, I had them yesterday, but they represent 14 towns. Troop K may have 16. So there's a lot of those towns are being piled on this one dispatch. All of a sudden now you go from 15 to 55 or 60 towns, and it's just overwhelming with the amount of dispatch. It'll be different where we are in regionalization.
Oh, so much different. I just didn't want them to get mixed up. Now that there's they're trying to back away from that.
Right. There is a bill to undo that consolidation
Yeah,
because
I
of
saw
the
that.
stresses that are occurring, and they're actually offering state troopers the opportunity to go work overtime and get in there and help the dispatchers on dispatching. Here, and the reason a lot of that problem is the call comes into the state police barracks and goes to a call taker. The call taker then gives it to the dispatcher. The dispatcher then has to determine where it goes. So there's another layer of confusion, and it's resulted in a lot of times. Here, we're going to have our East Lyme, our Waterford, and our New London dispatchers working together so that if some call comes in in Waterford for an event in New London, there's probably going to be a New London person there, so I know that's right there where the plasma screen will focus in exactly on where that is. Most of us know a lot about New London. Most of us know a lot about Waterford, even if we don't live there. So I think the familiarity will be a lot better than having somebody in Tallinn go. And we had a situation here where we had a gunshot go off in Black Point. The dispatcher up in Tallinn, gets the call, and I don't know where Black Point is. That doesn't exude a lot of confidence to the caller just saying, I need some help here. So I don't think we'll have some of these problems, and the call will go directly to a dispatcher. So I think that there'll be some money savings there, and I don't know. The process report has been done. The committee is working on an implementation report. So whether that we get into maybe December 31st or July 1 of next year, I'm not quite sure. But there will be, the part-timers will have some savings there because they won't be as utilized as much. And animal control, I talked about that. We currently now have a sharing of animal control with Waterford, and our budget is half the cost of the Waterford police officer who acts as the ACO, the animal control officer for both communities. We're working on a 4-town to start animal control center because the one that we have, our facility, is quite old. There's a committee that's been working to save, to raise money, and they've raised about $130,000 toward a new facility. It's a community, a volunteer community that's going forward. We're working on a pilot program with Corrigan Correctional Institute where we can build the new animal control facility there on site, not in the prison, but just in the entrance to the prison. It will be built by prisoners. It will be overseen by construction personnel, but there's plenty of skilled labor there that can build this, and it will be maintained by prisoners in the off hours that it's open. So in terms of cleaning the cages and feeding the dogs and exercising, we'll have that opportunity, and it will work as a rehabilitative program for the prisoners. Well, for us, New London will maintain its ACO. We will be able to hire a lesser expensive ACO. We won't have need for a police officer to do that, and we'll be able. So there may be some savings
Is that going
there.
to replace the New London?
And the New London facility got damaged in one of the storms, so that's their decision. They'll deal with that, but this will be, and then maybe more and more towns will come in. So those are regional opportunities that may have some impact on the budget if they get done in time. So, and again, I could talk for a while. I know it's late, and I'm sorry to keep wandering on, but that's some of the things that are going on.
I understand we're talking to Dominion about a van.
Huh?
I understand we're talking to Dominion
I
about a
did,
van for the animals. I was
the-
talking to Kevin the other day.
The ACO, the animal control van has been donated by Dominion. That is a responsibility for East Lyme. We provide the truck, they provide the facility. Once we did that, I went and asked Dominion to pay for the truck. They've given us $20,000 or $25,000 toward the vehicle, so they've agreed to do so again, I believe. And so we've asked for $25,000, so that will go toward the van, and then so we just have to pay for half the officer. So thank you to the great folks in Dominion there.
They are great. Thank you.
Okay. Any further questions? Okay, old business, there is none. Public discussion. Anybody like to address the board on the public discussion? Seeing none? Board comments. Any board comments?
I'm sorry I won't be here for the next 2 meetings, but I'll be thinking of you all.
Sure. If you have any comments, send them to me.
Are you available by conference?
Yeah, try me.
Freedom.
Florida.
The hurricane should be done by now.
Yeah, I'm not going to have any time between now and departure, I'm sorry to say. But
I'll entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
6-0.
Question is, if you miss a meeting, can you please forgive us for comments?